Hey guys, see a few of you guys are joining in. Hey Mike, good to see you. Hey Alana, we'll give Blake a minute, and as soon as he requests to join, we'll get started. I hope everyone's doing well today. All right, thumbs up, Erica. Hey Haley, great to see you. Hey E, can you ping Blake and just make sure he's good to go on his end? Thanks. What's going on, Kellen? Good to see you. I bought this fancy microphone to use for these types of sessions, but unfortunately I didn't have the right cables to hook it up. So you're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to make do with the audio that comes through the iPhone. So hopefully it's good enough. Blake is an amazing co-founder and a great business partner and a really good friend. But he's terrible about being on time. So, oh, there he is. All right, I see. Hi. As I'm throwing him under the bus. Let's see. Go live with Blake. All right. It says it's waiting for you to join, Blake.
Minute late. 1 minute late. Jeez.
Oh man. we have a saying in the military, and Blake's heard me say this before, but if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late, and if you're late, don't bother showing up. So glad we could make it. We had some technical difficulties, so we're all good. Great. Well, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. Looks like we've got a pretty good group dialed in, so thanks for being here. Blake and I really just wanted to take a opportunity to, I guess, ask each other some questions. These are questions from our one of the tools that we use in our connection month, but they really do a great job of kind of pulling out some stories and allowing you to learn a little bit more about another person and kind of how different people think about the world differently. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to get to know the founders of Made For and share a little bit with you guys. So Blake, thanks for joining, and maybe I'll kick it off. Do you have anything you want to say before I kick it off with a question?
No, I just think that this Connect deck has been such an amazing tool that I've gone back to time and time again, not just in the month that it's part of, but I'd love to keep it at my desk in the office or on the dinner table, because it's such a great way to get to know people and have more deeper, meaningful conversation, which being in quarantine right now, I think we're all looking for. So I'm glad to do this with you on Instagram Live, and I hope that many people benefit as well.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So we did this about a week ago with some of our members, and I'll scroll and you tell me when to stop, and then I will.
Okay, stop. I'm really doing it random. You're not setting me up.
No setups here. Okay. Which personal achievement are you most proud of?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that there's two things that come to mind. I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind from a work perspective is founding Tom's, and really not because of what we have done with Tom's and giving 100 million shoes away and helping people around the world, but really in how many businesses have followed suit. Seeing thousands of companies that have started a giving model in their business, or a one-for-one model over the past 13 years is really been incredible, humbling, and something I'm really grateful for, and something that I'm really proud of being part of that movement that has really changed the way that I think a lot of companies approach their business and capitalism. And then the second thing is my kids. I mean, you have two beautiful girls now, so but I mean, when I see especially my son Summit, who's now 5, my daughter Charlie's 2, when I see Summit do something truly kind for someone, or when he, is really sweet to his sister, or he, is really engaged in something in like a meaningful way, I can see all the hard work of parenting kind of paying off, and that makes me feel really proud. And it also just gives me encouragement to keep doing the hard work of parenting, even when sometimes you don't really see the benefit or see that they're really learning something from you. So I'm very proud of who he is already as a 5-year-old and who Charlie's becoming.
It's very cool. Yeah, I
What
love.
about you?
Oh man. Okay. Which personal achievement am I most proud of? Um, Man, I think, it's interesting. It's easy to break it apart, like professional and personal. Um, I think from a professional standpoint, I'm really proud of my time in the military, and just kind of how I tried to show up and be a good teammate for my teammates when I was in the SEAL teams. And so I think that's something that I'm really proud of. But personally, I think it comes back to, really does come back to kind of family, and the fact that I have an amazing wife. I've got 2 amazing daughters, and that every day we take opportunities to find ways to kind of connect and grow stronger, both as grow stronger as a family, but then also my wife and I continue to grow stronger on like our individual paths. And so it's been really nice and rewarding to see kind of the family gel together, and to kind of be on this path together. So I think that's my most proud personal thing. And it's
Cool.
certainly, I think with a backdrop of coronavirus and starting a new business, and you can attest to this, that there's more things to do than there is time in the day. But, just the ability to try to find these kind of small moments throughout the day when we can invest in the things that we care most about. I don't know. I really like the path that puts me on and puts my family on, and hopefully puts Made For on as a business. So yeah, that's what I'm most proud of. Cool. All right, let's do another one.
Yeah. Stop.
Oh, wow. Okay. Which of your possessions holds the most sentimental value to you?
Oh, wow. It's easy because it's sitting right next to me right now. Here you go. So this is my journal. I got it from a street vendor in Argentina in 2008, 2 years after starting Tom's. It's nice because you have this paper and then you can change out the paper. And so I have literally hundreds and hundreds of these, the paper inserts that goes in the journal. But this literally goes everywhere with me, as it is right here today. And it's like the one possession that, like, if I lost it, I would really be heartbroken. There's a lot of things that I have and love and get to use every day. Another one is I've been using a real camera lately. So I've stopped taking photos of my iPhone and trying to not have my phone and be more present with the kids and take pictures of them with this camera, which I've also had for a long time. So it's another possession that I really love. But if I lost this camera, I could buy another one. Whereas I don't think I could ever find a journal like that again. And so that's what gives it the sentimental value.
How many journals do you have saved, do you think, over the years? Because you've been doing this for a number of years
since
now.
I was 15. Yeah, I think at one point we counted like over 300.
Oh my God. Do you go back and read them ever?
I do, and I recently have gone back and read some this past holiday season. I was kind of going through a tough time. Hey, Wubatu, nice to see you, buddy. I was going through it, and actually Wubatu is related to this. But I was going through a hard time this holiday season, and a good friend of mine, a pastor at our church in Jackson Hole, Jimmy Bartz, mentioned that he felt like I was also going through a hard time last holiday season, and maybe there's a correlation there. And I went back and read my journals from the previous holiday season, and I did see some themes of why maybe I have been having a hard time around that time of year. And so that's always really nice when you can go back and kind of get a perspective that you had maybe 6 months, a year, or 10 years ago. And I think that's one of the reasons to journal, is they can really become, your own words can be your best teacher if presented back to you at the right time. And that's what journals allow me to do.
I love that. That's so powerful. I think it's so for me, which one of my possessions holds the most sentimental value? God, I counted up the other day how many times I've moved since I started college, and I think it's been something like, I don't know, 28 times, where I've actually had to physically pack up all of my possessions and put them in a U-Haul truck and drive somewhere and move. And so what that has forced me to do is to not hold a lot of attachment to possessions. So I tend to get rid of a lot of stuff just because I don't like having to pick it up and carry it around. But I
Yeah,
think one of the things that has been bringing a lot of value to me of late is I have this ukulele, and Blake's
I
seen
love
me
it.
take it on a couple of our trips. I'm terrible at it, but I figured out a couple of songs to play now, and I love it because I I take the first hour, the first 2 hours of every day, and the last hours of every day to make sure that I'm present with my daughters and to be there for them. And so I've started playing songs for them on the ukulele, and they love it. They just kind of sit and watch and laugh and clap, and that just brings me so much joy. So the
I
ukulele is
love it.
probably my favorite possession right now. Um, cool. All right, let's do another one.
I think you should play a song for us at the end of this, Pat.
If I
Okay,
had the right microphone, maybe.
stop right here.
All right.
Okay.
Name one thing you admire in a friend.
Man. Um, I'm gonna give you a compliment here, because I really admire how you don't ask people what they need, but you just act in helping friends when you see that there is something that they could use in their life that you could help them with. I really learned that from you. I know that's something that you learned in the military, but until I really heard you talk about it that way, I think I always would feel like a need or desire to help someone, and the first thing I would do is ask them, hey, can I help you with this? And 75 or 80% of the time, they have either too much pride or they don't want to put you out, and they say, no, I'm good, I'm fine, and then you don't end up acting. But what you taught me and what you do really well, I think, is just start helping someone, and almost they have to tell you no, stop. And I think that's just a really beautiful thing, and I've learned that from you, so I appreciate that.
Oh man, thank you for sharing that. I benefited from essentially growing up in the SEAL teams, and it's interesting when you hear SEALs, and some of you may have heard me say this before, but when you hear SEALs talk about another SEAL, they don't say that that person's a really good shot, or they're really strong, or they're really big, or whatever. If it's a good person and they vouch for him, they say it's a good team guy. And so we're always talking about this sense of and reinforcing this idea that you're on a team, and that you should be kind of in service to your team and your teammates. And so it's funny, like growing up in both in training and then on teams and kind of overseas, people are hyper aware when there are team needs that need to be met, or someone needs help of some kind, and just being attuned to make sure that you're servicing those, and never wait for someone to ask you. So I certainly left an impression on me from my time in the team. So thank you for calling out. That's cool. I'll come back to you with one then. One thing that I admire, I think one of the things that I admire most about you is that you just have this, you kind of lead with your heart, and it's really, really inspiring. And it's obviously, it shows just in kind of some of the work that you've done both with Tom's, then outside of Tom's, but that you really show up with your heart fully invested in whatever it is that you're doing, and that you never allow, I don't feel like you allow anything to get in the way of that, of just showing up and being fully present, and like fully loving whatever it is that you're doing, and bringing your full self to it. So that's something that I've really appreciated and admire, where I think sometimes I can get stuck in a little bit of the analytic side of it, or the logic side of things. Just seeing how you show up with your full heart and kind of passion has inspired me to do that a little bit more. So
Cool.
yeah,
Thank you.
cool. All
So I
right.
love about
Well,
this Connect game. It gives us a great opportunity to say something nice about one another, which is always good for a business partnership, especially when it's on live.
I'm gonna come back and reference these. All right.
Exactly.
We're gonna do this for maybe 30 minutes, but if people have questions that are watching, please fire away, and we're happy to kind of take this in whatever direction you want. But I think we're gonna stay on for 30
I see
minutes.
my good friend Lydia just posted one, so maybe I'll answer it.
Great.
Nice to see you, Lydia. I miss you. How do we promote collaboration instead of competition? It's really interesting. During this quarantine, I think the biggest realization that I've had and the biggest theme that I'm integrating into all aspects of my life is that we literally make every decision, and this kind of references what Pat just said about me, but every decision I think is either motivated by one or two things, and that is either love or fear. And I think that when we are collaborating, it's because we really are bringing our heart and our love and our connectedness to everyone together to help solve a problem, and we're putting our self-interest on the back burner. When we are overly competitive, I think we're acting often out of fear, and our self-interest and our fear of not having enough or scarcity is leading that decision or that discussion. And so I know that for me right now, the biggest thing I'm trying to ask myself and meditate on all day long is, am I doing that out of love or am I doing that out of fear? And so, like, even philanthropy, I've been spending a lot of time working with about 10 nonprofits in Jackson Hole, where I live most of the year, and helping them with many, many different, issues that we're dealing with the coronavirus. And as I leaned into being, really philanthropic at a higher level than I've ever been with some of these organizations, I recognize that I'm doing it out of love of my community and of people and wanting to help them. Versus sometimes I think in philanthropy you can say, gosh, I should do this, or you do it out of like an obligation. And I think obligation ultimately goes back to fear. And so that's a little bit of a ramble on your question, Lydia, but I think if I could say is the more we can just ask ourselves, am I doing this out of fear, out of love? It's such a good barometer to all decisions that we can make. And that goes to collaboration and competition as well.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. Okay, let's do another one.
Okay, stop.
How do you celebrate wins in life?
Tequila. Oh, right. Man, I mean, I'm really good at celebrating wins. Not because I win all the time, but just because, like, I mean, if you have an opportunity, do it. I think the best way to celebrate wins is with family, loved ones, friends, because celebrating by yourself is no fun. And I think that, but it's interesting. I like that question because I think, there's so many different ways to celebrate, but also I think it's so easy to not celebrate. And I think life can be really tough, and especially in a startup business like we have with Made For, like, I always encourage, and I did this in the early days of Tom's as well, like the team to really stop and take stock of the small wins, because we work really hard and you should take a break and really celebrate those. But with friends and family, and usually some tequila is the way I do it.
I love it. Yeah, it's such a great point, and especially in a startup, in that, and I know I fall into this mindset of like, there's always something else. And so it's hard to force yourself to actually like pause and reflect on like, hey, how much we've achieved up to this point, or when we do have a win, making sure that the team kind of knows that, hey, let's call this a win and let's kind of celebrate it. I fall into that. I fall guilty to this, like constantly thinking about what's next. But yeah, it's great. For me, how I celebrate wins, I think it goes to a little bit. There's another question that sometimes we get around, like, what's your perfect day? And I think my perfect day is one of extremes. So whether it's, being outdoors, doing something really physically active that's really challenging, hopefully alongside friends, but finding an extreme that way, or working really hard on a project, and then contrasting that with finding ways to like totally savor a moment. And like, so extreme like hard or extreme comfort, and I like the way that those two contrast. And so when I think of a win that I would celebrate, ideally it's something that I've worked really, really hard for, and that I feel comfortable kind of like taking a wrap off and like relaxing and being present in the moment. Again, sometimes maybe it's tequila, or just having some friends around, or maybe it's just sitting out and like, watching the sunset and just like giving yourself the time and the space to relax and savor all the work and effort that manifested in the win. That's how I think about it, but very cool. The extremes are so relevant right now. Yeah, for sure, Courtney. I love that. Cool. All right. Maybe let's do it. Let's do another one.
Okay. Stop.
Which possession did you think would make you happier than it actually did?
All of them. Seriously. I mean, this is this is a much longer answer to this question, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. One of the big lessons I've learned over the years and having some financial success and being able to buy stuff that I thought I always wanted is that stuff is nice and that's great, but at the end of the day, no possession has ever made me feel any more deeper sense of joy and peace than before. I mean, they're wonderful things, but I always say, like, you can have it all and it can all have you. And I think that's what happens with stuff is sometimes the more stuff we have, the more it controls us and takes away our mindset and our mind space from being with the people we love. So I'm not against having stuff, but I definitely have learned the lesson, maybe the hard way, that stuff is not going to give me enough significance compared to the relationships that I have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have kind of a similar response, and I found that over time, my anticipation of the rewards that acquiring a physical possession is going to give me is lessened. So I just expect that, hey,
Yeah.
that initial pop that I get from getting a new phone or from whatever the thing is, that like I just expect that that's going to go away and fade quickly, and generally it does. I think the one thing that I found that I've never regretted spending money on is on adventures of any kind, whether it's on a climbing
Memories.
trip or
Yeah,
like,
making memories.
yeah, making memories alongside friends. Like those dollars or that energy that I've spent towards that, even on trips that have gone south and weren't great, or I would never, I would always index on spending on memories. So yeah,
I see
very
a
cool.
question here from Haley I might answer. It says, what do you guys do when you have a creative productivity block and you're feeling unmotivated? I think it ties to one of the pillars of Made For, and that is around movement. I find that if I am feeling unmotivated or having a creativity block, the best thing I can do is move my body. Now, that might be a strenuous surf session, or it might be a very simple, walk down the block with my 5-year-old. But whenever I get out and I move my body, it kind of gets me out of my head. And when I get out of my head, then I can usually go back into my intellect with more creativity and more levity. So that's, to me, is the best thing to do. And to be more specific, movement in water. So going for a swim or a surf, I find, is even more powerful for me than going for a walk or a run. The two things combined really help kind of reset me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
Glad
that.
you like the mohawk, Rachel.
I'm
I'm
glad
getting
I'm
mixed
glad
reviews. So I like
I'm,
a positive one's good.
I'm glad I didn't get that challenge. Yeah, I would say just to dovetail on that, movement for me is the same thing. And I find that if I am in a place where I'm stuck in my head, or I'm finding whether I'm having a productivity block or I'm just a little bit kind of down, my default is to try to be in action. And so recognize that I'm not going to work through that block or through that temporary, temporary lull by just sitting there and breathing into it and waiting for it to pass. Like I actually have to go and do something. And even, it can be a run outside, it can be a walk, it can be, a conversation with a friend, calling somebody up, but I have to get into action. And then by being in action, I'm able to find my way back through that productivity block. And it's one of those things I don't think you can force it. You can't force it by sitting there and waiting for it to pass. So cool. Great question. Thanks, Haley. All right.
Okay, stop.
What's the hardest thing you ever had to say no to?
Hardest thing I've ever had to say no to. Man, I feel like every morning when I'm battling Summit to watch a show. Screen time for my 5-year-old. No. Man, that's such a good question. Nothing immediately comes to mind. Do you have something that comes directly to mind? I can think about it for a second.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, this, and I may have answered this on a previous live, so I apologize if you guys are hearing me repeat myself. But the hardest thing I ever had to say no to was an opportunity to stay in the military and to stay in the SEAL teams. Um, I was in for just over almost 9.5 years, and it was something when I was in seventh grade. I read a book about it, and that was a thing that I wanted to do, and so I had a visceral connection to the SEAL teams and the people that I served alongside, and it was just such an amazing experience. And I had the opportunity to stay in that, but I ultimately decided to leave because I knew at some point I wanted to have a family, meet someone, get married, have a family, and all that. And I couldn't reconcile how I could stay in the teams and service a family at the same time, or find my way to a family. And so that was probably the hardest thing that I've had to say no to, was to walk away from that community. But it's something that I found ways to stay connected and hopefully continue to serve my brothers that are still brothers and sisters that are still in the military serving. And so that's meant a lot to me.
Yeah, as you tell that story, I really I can't say that I've had some like big moment in my life where I had to walk away from something or say no to something that was really hard. I mean, I think the most common thing I have to say no to is offers and opportunities to go to speak at large gatherings, conferences, companies, just because I don't have enough time and don't want to be away from my family that much, because I love speaking to people and I love inspiring people with the Toms and the Made For story and my personal journey, and I have to say no to that quite a bit. A little bit less now that they're letting me doing it digitally, which is nice. But no, I don't really have that big thing, and I'm going to reflect on maybe why that is. But that's a great question. So
yeah, I think you posted about this the other day, and I think obviously it's a part of Made For as well that we talk about, but this sense of kind of mission and your values. And I know you posted your family's kind of values, and I think having done all the work that you've done around that and having clarity around that, it almost makes it easy to say no to things, right? Because you can look through that and say like, yeah, no, I prioritize my family, or here I'm prioritizing an adventure, or here I'm prioritizing, my friendships and kind of my relationships. But I think doing the work that you've done in that space allows you to quickly say no things and say no to things without having any kind of sense of regret, I would imagine.
yeah, I think that's probably maybe why I don't have that sense of regret around things I say no to, because I've created a framework where I make it very easy to. I mean, I did this podcast earlier today with Inc. magazine about books that you love, and the book I talked about was Essentialism. And Essentialism really helps you identify like all these places in life where you do things because you quote should, and should is such a horrible way to live your life. And so when you eliminate kind of the should from your life and you really are clear about what you're doing and what your purpose is and why you're doing it, then like you said, it's much easier to say no to things and be clear and not have any remorse or regret or feel like you're missing out on anything.
I think it's telling that. So we both did the same podcast, and they said, hey, select a book that informed Made For and kind of that helped bring Made For into being. Blake chose Essentialism, which makes a ton of sense, and I chose this book, How Will You Measure Your Life, by Clayton Christensen. But I think they both map to kind of this understanding your true kind of purpose and intention and how you want to show up in the world. And to Blake's point around should and how that can be a very negative word and a negative way to kind of live your life. I don't know. It's just cool to think about the books that we chose and how they kind of tie into one another, and then also tie into kind of a larger vision of Made For and what we're doing here. So I see that we're almost out of time. So I would just, thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. Thank you to our members that are on. We really enjoy serving you and seeing all the benefits that you're experiencing through the course of the program. And I think if we could leave you with one thought, or if I could leave you with one thought, it's that you have everything you need inside you. It's just a matter of connecting with those small things throughout the day, the small moments that you have throughout your day, and how those moments can be in service of you, or how they can not. And so whether it's getting outside, talking with friends, finding ways to express gratitude, deepening your social connections, investing a little bit of time in how you rest, how you hydrate, how you move through the world. All of those little things throughout your day matter a great deal. It's what Made For is really all about. And this idea that a better world really begins with the best use. So please take advantage of those small moments, whether you're doing it with Made For or not. And thanks for joining us today. I don't know if Blake, if you have any parting thoughts, but
No, I think you summed it up perfectly.
great. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. We look forward to talking again soon. Take care. Cheers.
Okay. Bye, guys.